podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to Humans of Speedway. I'm Ian Brannan and I'm pleased to say that we round out our final new episode of 2021 with the 2021 British Speedway Champion, Adam Ellis.
And Adam Ellis is going to lift his first ever British title! What a ride from Ellis!
Adam's journey to the top of British Speedway, though, began in France. He was born and raised in the heart of long track country around Mormont, and he began grass track racing as a youngster. After success on the French grass track scene, he eventually found his way into the British youth system under the watch of Neil Vatcher and Phil Morris. And that led to a place racing for the Isle of Wight Islanders in 2012 and 2013, progressing into the Premier League or the Championship with the Ipswich Witches in 2013 and 2014. And then onto the top league, the Elite League, now called the Premiership, with 2 league titles to his name with the Swindon Robins in 2017 and 2019. And these days, of course, he rides for the Sheffield Tigers. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Humans of Speedway, Adam Ellis.
Hey Ian.
Let's start at the very end of this last season, because it ended very suddenly in a 4-rider pile-up in the Great Britain versus Poland test match, and you were right in the thick of that, and it did look, it was a spectacular crash, but it did look really bad. Everybody was delighted to see you actually get up off the track yourself, but you were injured, weren't you? What was that incident? Just tell us about that whole heat.
It didn't end the best. Probably the worst possible outcome you could have on last meeting and the last heat of the season, really. So obviously I knew it was going to be my last heat, and I hadn't been having a very good night up till then. So mechanics would geeing me up a little bit in the pits, telling me to finish the season on a high, and I was probably a bit overexcited on that one. So it was. It was tough. Still recovering at the minute. Probably got another 4 weeks or so before I can get back to riding a bike again. So kind of looking forward to that.
And what actually happened? Because it was on the back straight, really, from where the cameras were, because it was on the live stream and stuff. So there wasn't many angles of it. But what occurred down there? Because everybody seemed to get in a tangle and all 4 riders went down. Yeah,
I think I kind of caused that one. It was a bit of a misjudgment from myself. There was, most of the night, the on the white line on the inside was the quickest way round the first corner, and I kind of knew that coming off 4, so stayed wide and made a cutback, thinking that Kibera was going from the inside straight to the fence, like everyone or most people had been doing all night. But I think with the rain coming down, made it a bit greasy, and coming off the corner, he turned a bit harder than I expected coming off the corner, and I'd already committed to making the cutback to try and get up the inside of him down the straight. So, ended up running in the back of him, tried pulling out of it, but it was had a bit too much speed. So, it's not the best. And obviously Jordan and the other pole coming up behind, they couldn't do much. Luckily, there was nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, and you escaped with, what was it, a dislocated shoulder and some other injuries as well as what you're recovering from now?
Yeah, fractured collarbone and the dislocated shoulder. That's probably what's given me the most amount of stick at the minute. It's not too bad now. It's getting better, but for the first month or so, it was pretty awful. They couldn't get it back in for probably about 3 hours and had to sedate me in hospital. So it was a relief when I woke up and it was back in, but it was still a month of hell pretty much.
Yeah, it does sound painful. And, Speedway is a sport that we know can go wrong very, very quickly. And that heat was a perfect case in point. But not your first injury that you've received. You've had some pretty bad ones, necks, back injuries, broken bones. Obviously, you've got them now. What does that do for you when you are physically fit? The doctors might say you are healed, but mentally, is there ever a hangover when you're getting back on a bike, that you're maybe not quite as confident as you were, or not quite as ready to take the risks that perhaps you maybe previously would have done? Is there ever that kind of hangover from a big injury when you are back on a bike?
For some guys, I think it is. Personally, I haven't suffered much from that, which, you know, I'm pretty grateful for, because I've had my fair share of injuries over my career so far. So, but you know, the perfect example is when I broke my back last year. It was a long time off the bike, and you know, I started feeling better. Probably, well, I was exercising probably a good 6 weeks before I managed to get back on the bike, so I had enough time to, you know, build up some fitness, build up the strength that I'd lost while I was sitting on the sofa, and you, throughout those 6 weeks, you really want to get out and ride. So when you get down to it, it's more, when you get to the day where you get back on the bike, it seems to be more excitement, and you forget what's happened because you feel fit, you feel ready, and you've had a long time off. But with the smaller injuries, definitely, it's like if you fracture a collarbone and you try and ride 3 weeks later, then you can still feel it. It's sore, and you seem to hesitate a lot more. So yeah, fingers crossed. Going to have a fair bit of time off for this one. So hopefully nothing, no hesitations or anything like that.
Okay, well, speedy recovery, and it won't be long before you're back on a bike, we know that. Let's go right back to the very start of your story, though, because you come from a different position, really, from the majority of riders, certainly racing in the UK, in that you were brought up in France. You were born in France, brought up in France, of course, with a British family, but you were involved, nonetheless, in the grass track scene. Eventually, I know that your dad has got big links with the grass track and the long track scene there, and you've got family friends who are well known, such as Jeremy Doncaster being one, and in the Jeremy Doncaster episode from a year ago, he talks about spending time with your dad. So you've got these links in the family, haven't you? But what was your journey to getting on a bike for the first time and sort of going down this speedway path?
I always had a bike when I was a kid. I remember, I think my granddad bought me a bike when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I used to ride around the garden on that a lot, ride around the fields. We lived in the middle of the countryside, and in France it's a bit different to England. If you want to jump on your bike and go riding in the fields, you pretty much can. So I was lucky with that, and my grandparents always used to take me to all the meetings in France. They had some big long track meetings, and there was probably only about 15 meetings back then, but we never really used to miss any. And I come around to I was probably 11 or 12, and I think I'd tried every sport going. I'd tried everything and kind of lost interest in it after a while. The minute I'd get half decent at it, I'd think, oh, that's boring, I'll move on to something else. And yeah, always wanted to give it a go. So yeah, and I remember, so I'd asked my mum, and my mum said to me, "Oh, you speak to your dad, see what your dad says." So then I called my dad and spoke to him, and I think originally he said no. So I was kind of like, oh, it's a bit stuck with how I was going to do it. So you know, my granddad said to me, he's good friends with Cecil Taylor, who used to, if anyone's into grass track, probably from the 80s or 90s, or maybe even before then, they'd know of Cecil Taylor, and he's pretty handy guy. So he said to me, I can build you a bike up from leftover bits I've got. All we need is an engine. So my sister had some horses, and I used to sell the horse manure to the gardeners until I'd saved up for enough to buy an engine, and that's pretty much how we started. And it was good. It was, you know, I loved it from the first time I tried it, really, and I haven't really looked back since.
That's certainly a different way of funding your speedway career. I've not heard that one before.
Yeah, it was only to buy the first engine. I think it was about €150 for a little 125 engine, and I think my parents kind of thought if he's willing to do that, then, you know, he's probably going to stick at it. So So yeah, it worked out good.
And then where did it progress from there? Because obviously, as you mentioned, grass track and riding around fields. When did it start to get serious and to a point when you think, well, as you said, you try various sports out and get bored with it. When did it sort of click with you that actually, there's something in this, I do enjoy it and I want to keep doing it?
I don't know if there was a point. I kind of loved it. I always loved it as when I was a kid. Like I said, I never used to miss any meetings. My grandparents were pretty good like that. They used to take me anywhere. I could be coming home from a football match on a Saturday and I'd see a sign for a grass track meeting that day or that night, because they were all nighttime ones. And I'd call them up and they say, yeah, well, get home, have a shower, and then we'll come pick you up and we'll go. So I always loved it, and I think done a few practices, and then my dad got involved, and I think I'd done a few meetings. There was probably only 10 meetings for the 125s back then, so you wasn't riding every week, so you kind of I'd finish a meeting and couldn't wait for the next one. And obviously went up through the ranks, 250s and stuff, doing a few more meetings, and it was only really in I don't know how old it would have been, probably 15, and Phil Morris was doing his testimonial, and he's good friends with my dad, so he'd spoken to my dad and said, does Adam want to ride? And obviously I did. It was whether my dad was going to drive me over there, and he did, and kind of done one meeting, then got involved. Neil Vatcher got in touch and got me to do a few under 16 meetings, and I think I won the 2 rounds that I did of the under 16 British Championship, and then did a few meetings for the Isle of Wight, and obviously at the end of the meeting got some money for it, and I was thinking, this is great, I can make money from riding bikes, and that was pretty much it. From then on, I wasn't really interested in school, wasn't interested in anything like that, and just wanted to race speedway for a living.
Phil Morris, we've had on this podcast a while ago, but as you mentioned, him there and Neil Vatcher have had such an influence, haven't they, on the entire generation of British Speedway talent that we see on the tracks now. And I shared a video a little while ago that was from Phil from 10 years ago, and I don't think you were part of that meeting, but it was the kids of that era, and I think they were probably at 10 or 11, and you've got people like Kyle Bickley and a very young Tom Brennan who looks like he's about 8 at the time, and all these other names that the team sheet really of British Speedway now all together, and how they've all come through, and you obviously are part of that as well, not in that particular meeting that I'm talking about, but you all know each other and you've all been around each other for so much longer than I think any fan realises.
Yeah, we have. I probably joined the scene a bit later, but Phil and obviously especially Neil, because Neil was a big part in it. Phil I think he went and done the GPs after my second year in the under 21, so I didn't really get to work much with Phil. But those 2 guys are, it's people that they're not given enough credit, I don't think. They're the heroes. They're the guys that bring all the young kids on and, take the time where they're not really paid to do it. They just do it for the love of the sport, and they obviously want to see a lot more young guys come through. And they're pretty good. We've had some some good trips in the under 21s and under 19s, and to be fair, if it wasn't for Neil Vatcher and Phil, I don't think that there would be the amount of talent there is now, because there's not many guys that are willing to put the work they put in free of charge just for the love of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing now as well with France, though, the scene in France is a little bit different now than perhaps a few years ago when you were coming through, would you say? And we're seeing, obviously, the French team now starting to be serious opposition in, for example, the Speedway of Nations earlier this year. They're a lot handier, and the whole scene in France itself seems to be coming through a little bit more now.
Yeah, it is. It's I think they're doing a pretty good job here as well. I think they've realised that the future is in Speedway, whereas before it was a place or a country that was pretty much dominated by grass track. So there wasn't many speedway meetings. I think there was probably one track, and maybe they did 2 meetings a year if you were lucky. So all the French guys kind of all wanted to be in the long track Grand Prix, and it took probably the first guy to really push the envelope was David Belligo, and when he started going good, then a lot of the younger guys took notice and really wanted to progress in speedway. And it's good that the federation over here have taken notice, and they've built a lot more tracks. There seems to be new tracks popping up every now and again, and some old grass track tracks that are changing speedway tracks. So it makes a big difference when you can go practice and do the amount of meetings that they do compared to what they used to.
And with the GP situation changing over the next 10 years or so, there is certainly going to be different countries involved in the GP series. So it's not out of the question that a French Grand Prix might be something that you could be looking at in the future.
I think it's something that they're hoping for. It's kind of in the pipelines from what I've heard over here. There's many people or guys high up that are trying to make something happen, but I don't think it'll be any time soon, to be honest. It's if it's going to happen, it'll probably be on an artificial track, but they need to try and raise the level of the sport in the country so that they can probably fill a stadium, even just a small stadium, which it would be awesome, because there is obviously guys coming through. There's a few young guys who are riding the 125s who look pretty good, and who I think they could probably follow in the footsteps of David Belligo, and obviously the guy who's in charge of Discovery is French as well, so that probably helps.
Yeah, it's good to work closer to home.
Exactly.
So you made you mentioned there that you did a few laps at the Isle of Wight, and that was your first proper team, wasn't it, in British Speedway on the Isle of Wight when they were in the league?
Yeah, they were good. I think Neil had something to do with that as well. Getting me over there and getting me to sign for them. But that was the real eye opener for me, and in what league Speedway was like, because I didn't really know anything about it before that. I think we used to get the odd Speedway star every now and again come through, but it was all pretty new to me, and the people on the Isle of Wight were really good to me, and I had a lot of help from them and from people around there, which was good. And yeah, I see that they've pretty much started again now with some new owners, and it seems to be going good. I've only heard good things from them, so hopefully we'll be able to. I wouldn't mind getting back over there for a meeting at some point soon.
Yeah, just for like the nostalgia value, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, it was always good, mate. We used to love it because obviously being brought up, there was a lot of time spent at the track, and you made a lot of friends there in France. The meetings lasted all day, and when we went to Speedway meetings, it was you done your meeting and then everyone went home. Whereas at the Isle of Wight, everyone would go over on the same ferry. I knew Tom Perry from the meetings he did in France, and he was there at the same time, so it was probably a bit easier knowing someone. And then after the meeting, no one could get the ferry in for like another hour until the meeting finished. So we'd all go up the bar and have a chat and have some food. So it was a great way to start, I think.
Who did you look up to when you were a youngster then, with Speedway in mind? Who were your kind of Speedway heroes as such?
I'd say when I was a kid watching it, it was the era where Ricardson and Crumpy were up there, Nicky as well. But the two guys that I really liked watching was Ricardson and Crumpy. And then a little bit later on, I used to like AJ. It was more down to his racing style. He was a bit loose on the bike, and and his kit always looked really good. So it's probably those three.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not sure his plans for this season, but it was great to have Jason Crump back in the league last year, wasn't it? Did you get your chance to race against him at all?
I did, mate. It was that was pretty cool. I think the first meeting I did for Sheffield was at Ipswich, and him coming back, I kind of thought, I've got a good chance of beating him. And first 2 races, he smoked me, which was, I was kind of thinking, he's obviously still got it. But no, I think I managed to get a couple of race wins on him afterwards. So it was, it was good. I really enjoyed that. He's, someone I looked up to a lot as a kid, and to be able to race with him was awesome.
And of course, Ipswich, though, a track that you've also raced. You've been around a few of those tracks down south, haven't you? Raced for Ipswich, Lakeside, Eastbourne, and of course Swindon. Probably is probably what a lot of people will associate you with before Sheffield, of course. But all fairly different tracks as well in terms of the style, which is good for you. In the longer term, I think, for your career, isn't it? Getting the hang of these different types of circuit.
Yeah, it is. I probably wasn't thinking that at the time, to be fair. I was living down in Ringwood with Matt Reed, and neither of us really liked travelling too much. So we used to, I think the first year I went to Ipswich, and I was with Ipswich for a couple of years, and after that we said, we're never driving that far again. That was trying to get around the M25 every week was a nightmare. So stayed a bit closer to home with Poole and Swindon and kept it simple. But yeah, it has been quite diverse. The Swindon track, when they changed it in 2019, was probably the best move for me, because I wasn't a big fan of the old one, and I think then when that changed, that made a big difference to the way I rode the bike, and my confidence levels as well.
It's an interesting point you make there, though, about finding that a club's not for you, really, because it's hard for you to get to geographically or what have you, and you want it to be sort of close to where your base was. A lot of fans, when teams are being built, they're looking at riders, they're looking at averages, and they're sort of seeing who would fit and who might go well around a certain track. But I'm not sure so many fans probably take into account the rider's logistics when it comes to a choice in who you're going to ride for. So a team comes and offers you a contract, and it may not work out for you because maybe the airports aren't right, or as you say, it's too long a journey, and just logistically it's not going to work out. How big a factor is that for you as a rider in choosing your team?
It's a big part, really, because a lot of riders kind of want to race locally. You don't really want to be getting home from a meeting or a home meeting at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every week, especially if you've got to get up on a Tuesday morning and fly to Sweden, or go to Poland at the weekend. You kind of want to be home at a reasonable time. And there's the factor of the mechanics as well. A lot of us guys have people that we've worked with for a few years or long time, and even my mechanic in England, I've only started working with him this year, but he's the sort of guy that I don't really want to be changing from him. He's pretty good, and he lives in Sheffield, and he probably doesn't want to drive to Ipswich every week either, which takes a big part in it, because if you want to keep the people that you work well with, then you've kind of got to take their what they prefer into account as well. So there is a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, it's not necessarily far, but being brought up in France, we don't have the same sort of traffic that there is in the UK, and I think that's the killer for most riders. It's sitting in traffic trying to get up the M6 to Bellevue on a Monday night isn't the nicest of things.
Because you used to travel on the roads of the south more than the north until now, because you were, of course, title winner with the Swindon Robins twice in 2017 and 2019. And then in 2020, I think it came as a huge shock to everyone that Swindon weren't going to be running and, of course, going out as champions. And we knew that there was work due to happen at some point, but obviously the COVID pandemic certainly affected things. Were you as shocked as everyone else, being obviously at the time a Swindon rider, that things weren't going to be happening and this huge change to your plans for 2020 as far as Speedway is concerned?
It was a shock, mate, because I'm pretty sure we'd done the deal for 2020, and and obviously that had been nothing happened in 2020, and everyone just assumed that everything was going ahead in 2021, and we found out quite late on. I think it was, I can't remember if it was around Christmas time or just after Christmas, which isn't ideal. By then, normally you've got all your teams sorted and you kind of working on getting your bikes ready and sorting out some sponsorship and stuff like that. So it was a shock, but from what I've heard, they were planning on coming back for 2022, and that obviously not happening. So fingers crossed that it can all come back in 2023. I see that they've started doing some work on the stadium, and it's just hoping that it's not going to be knocked down and turned into houses.
It looks, I mean, I don't know anything, but from me looking at it, the track is still there. It does look like they're doing work for the stadium rather than bulldozing it, and so to me, it looks sort of genuine. So hopefully, it does make the stadium a better place. And I would be concerned if they'd bulldozed the speedway track or ripped it up like you see at some stadiums, like they did at Workington, for example. The first thing they did was rip the speedway track up, where at least the shale's still down. Well,
everything's still there from what I was told, at the end of this season, and they could have run next year, but it would have been without fans. I think fans could have only stood on turns 1 and 2, which isn't ideal. So they took the decision not to run, and but I think we've seen enough speedway tracks close down over the last 10 years to know that it is a possibility. But I'm pretty sure that everyone at the club there wants it to come back in 2023 with hopefully a new stadium. And some, hopefully I keep the same track anyway.
That's Adam Ellis, the 2021 British champion. He's going to tell us more about that experience of winning that fantastic prize very soon, and also about that move to Sheffield. And he's going to describe to us his dream speedway meeting as well in our Speedway Paradise feature before the end. Who'll make his all-time 1 to 7? And what's his favourite track? Just a few of the questions yet to be answered on this episode of Humans of Speedway with Adam Ellis. You're listening to Humans of Speedway, part of the Sports Social Podcast Network. I'm Ian Brannan, and my special guest in this episode is the 2021 British Speedway Champion, Adam Ellis. Now, Adam was riding with the Swindon Robins in 2017 and 2019, and was a league title winner with them there as well, with a spell at Pool Pirates in between. But he had to swap the south for the north when Swindon announced that they weren't going to be running. When you got this news for you, I mean, obviously it threw your plans into chaos. What was the process? Did you frantically go around trying to get yourself another team place, knowing that obviously a lot of the teams were getting full, or were you just hoping the phone would ring?
It come about with, originally when Swindon pulled out, I decided that I wasn't going to race in England with... The year we had with COVID was pretty hard for travelling, so I'd signed in Poland, Sweden and Denmark, and I thought I was going to set or mainly concentrate on doing well out there. But so I turned quite a few clubs down in England for that year, and just Steady was pretty persistent. He wouldn't give up, so I ended up saying yes to him. I worked out how many meetings it would be, and I thought that would probably be better than doing Denmark, because Denmark had dropped down to 7 or 8 meetings for the season. Obviously, I'm over the moon. I did it. It's been a pretty big part in my development this year. I think from the start, everything was going good, scoring points. The team we got on really well. We probably didn't get the results we wanted on track, but there was a good team spirit there, and it's been pretty good for me. I've based myself up north now, which I always said I wouldn't want to live up north, and now I do. I say, it's much better than living down south. So, it's been pretty good, and obviously I'm really happy to be back next year, and hopefully we can build on what we started this year.
But there's so much. It's a lot cheaper, I think, up north. I don't know what else you found. I mean, Sheffield does have its particular quirks, I think.
Yeah, it's, I've seen a lot of people in Sheffield in town that seem a bit different, you could say, but all part of the entertainment. And then there's a lot more. Well, the main thing for me is the airports. There's like 5 airports to pick from, whereas when I was living in Ringwood, I pretty much flew from Stansted every week, which isn't ideal. So I've got a lot more airports to pick from.
Yeah, that's it. You've got Doncaster. Sheffield used to have its own airport, and they shut it down because they couldn't fit any planes on the runway. It was
Really?
the most Sheffield thing ever.
We could do with opening it up again.
You have your own private jet.
There's a fair few, mate. I think I've pretty much done all this year: Doncaster, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool, East Midlands. So it's not too bad. I can't complain about that.
Yeah, it's not bad. Have you sampled Henderson's Relish yet? The great Sheffield delicacy.
I haven't. No. What's that? A beer?
No, it's absolutely not that. It's a bit like Worcestershire sauce. And
okay.
they probably have it on the counter in where they sell the pies and stuff at the stadium in Sheffield. But that's the done thing in Sheffield, is putting that on your pie. So there's something for you. Yeah, you'll do it once. You'll either love it or you won't. There'll be no middle ground. And you despite the restrictions and everything, you battled on through 2021. Being an international speedway rider, as you mentioned, riding in Sweden and did you ride in Poland as well, wasn't it? So you had a busy time. How was it in those early weeks? Because you did have a bit of bother, didn't you, getting back for a Sheffield meeting at the start of the season in 2021 because of COVID restrictions and stuff that didn't make sense and things like that, which seemed to improve as the year went on.
Yeah, it definitely got better. It kind of felt like we was back to normal at the end of the year, and the start didn't go so good for me. I had a flat out in Poland and was kind of basing myself out there and was planning on just flying back for the meetings in England, and it was a mess up. I flew to Poland on the Thursday, I think, so I needed a test on the Wednesday night, which I'd done, and then I had one Thursday morning when I landed, and then I had to go to the track to get a PCR test done so that I could race on the Sunday in Poland, and so both of those first 2 tests were negative, and the third one come back positive, which I found out Saturday morning. So that was a bit of drama, and we got another one done which come back negative on Sunday morning. So did the meeting in Poland, went to the airport, and got there, and they wouldn't let me on the flight because they said I was on the quarantine list, which was obviously weren't too happy about. So we spent a bit of time there arguing and, trying to, Doyley was on the same flight, so I was trying to convince him to convince them to let me through, which weren't happening. And ended up kicking me off, fined me, and basically said to me, you got to go home and quarantine. So that's what happened with the first Sheffield meeting. It was nothing to do with travel restrictions, more just down to, one dodgy test, which I had another 2 after that the following week, which come back negative. But other than that, it was okay. It got better as the year went on, got a lot easier. All the restrictions were lifted, and managed to get a French passport as well, which made that a hell of a lot easier. All in all, it was pretty good towards the end.
Yeah, and we'll touch on this season in a moment, but you are going to be doing that hopefully again next year as well with different clubs. And you mentioned Jason Doyle, but you've sort of replaced him in the Swedish league, haven't you? In is it Dakarna that you've signed for?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind if I could replace the amount of points he scored. I'd be pretty happy with that.
Well, yeah. But great to have him back in the British League, though, for next season, though. It's going to be great to see him back, and a GP rider back in the Premiership too.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I think everyone likes to watch. He's pretty aggressive on the bike, and he never really gives up. So proper racer, which is good. And I think Britain have missed having the riders like that here this year. So it'd be good to have him back next year, as well as some others like Kilderman, and there was a few others, but I don't know if they've been announced yet.
Okay, well, just in case they haven't, we'll keep them up our sleeves. British Speedway seems to be getting its mojo back. I'm going to say that because we've gone through a few years where maybe Sweden or Denmark, obviously Poland we know about, but these other leagues have maybe been competing a little bit for the attention of the top riders, and it does seem now that some of the top riders are starting to look back at the British leagues again with a bit of love, and we're seeing them starting to come back, which is fantastic, isn't it?
British Speedway is good for a rider's point of view. You obviously get a lot of meetings. There's no squad system, so if you're a guy that wants to race a lot, you'll be in the team every week, which is the biggest problem with Poland, Sweden, and Denmark. And then also it costs a hell of a lot less to race in England than what it does to race in the other countries as well. So I think a lot of the guys realised, or I particularly realised, how much it you seem to be making more money abroad, but it costs you a hell of a lot more as well. So I think it's not, British Speedway isn't as bad as a lot of people think. It's just the only downside is having to have a whole second setup just for racing in the UK, whereas abroad you can use all your kit from Poland for everything. So it's not too bad from a rider's point of view. Obviously I enjoy it. The tracks are different, a lot more technical, so it makes you ride the bike a bit differently, and it'll be good when next year when we get a few guys back, and hopefully in the coming years have a few more. Okay,
so here's some of the things that people will say about British Speedway, and your response from a rider's point of view. People will say,
"Yep,
we should have one big league and no doubling up." How would that work for you as a rider?
That'd probably be quite a lot of meetings. So
yeah,
personally, I'm someone who, over the years, I've wanted to do as many as I can, which it's not a bad thing, but it kind of, as I'm getting a bit older, and I want to try and focus more on the meetings that I've committed to. So obviously focus on Sheffield meetings, Poland and Sweden, and when you take on too many, it gets pretty tiring with the travel and the riding, and you get to a lot of tracks and you kind of don't really feel in the mood for racing. So for me personally, I think that'd be too many meetings in England to attract the riders who want to race abroad and try and move on in their career.
Yeah, and probably struggle from the sheer amount of riders required to fill all those teams.
Possibly, yeah. I reckon the only way they could do it is probably doing like Denmark and dropping down to 5 riders or something.
And the other thing is, people will say we should have a squad system like in Poland, and you've already touched on that sometimes that can be a bit of a nightmare for a rider because you don't know if you're going to be riding or not.
Yeah, I think it'll be ideal for a small percentage of riders. It'll be good for riders who are, like the GP boys. You'd probably attract them back if they only had to do half the meetings, but even then I don't know if you would, because they probably wouldn't want to have a whole other setup just for doing half the amount of meetings. And I reckon you'll see a lot of young riders, or the second string riders, that would probably miss out on a lot of meetings and end up quitting the sport, which is obviously not what any of us want.
And for you in 2021, talking about doubling up, you got a shot in Scunthorpe for sort of half the season, and really made a big difference to Scunthorpe, because they were struggling with their away form, and that was really your job to help sort that out, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was, I'd have liked to have probably done a bit better at home as well, but that didn't really happen for one reason or another. I couldn't really put my finger on it, but away from home, I felt like I did the job that was asked of me, or the main reason why I was brought in, and we made the playoffs. It's just a shame we couldn't get through to the semis, which would have been awesome. I've never really had much to do with Scunthorpe in the past, and this year was the first year, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. The team spirit was probably on par with some of the best teams I've been involved with, and Rob and Gail are really good at really easy to get on with, and you never have any problems with them. And team manager Dave, he was awesome as well. So it was something I looked forward to going to Scunny on a Friday. Probably not for the racing, but more for the atmosphere.
Now, on an individual level, 2021 cannot be anything other than really a fantastic season, because your name is now etched into that British Championship trophy alongside some great names. I mean, the trophy itself, I think, dates back to the 1960s, and you've got people like Barry Briggs and Ivan Major on there from the early days. But as far as British champions goes, you've got Chris Morton, Kelvin Tatum, Simon Wigg, Andy Smith, Chris Louis, Scott Nichols, Mark Loram, Ty Woofenden, and now Adam Ellis alongside all those as well as 2021 British champion. It sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sounds good. I like the sound of that. It was one of my main goals for this year. I I really wanted to win that, and all just happened on the night, which was good. It wasn't hard work. It was stupid. It was probably one of the easiest meetings we'd done. Pretty much, we didn't really change much with the bikes. Didn't have to think about it too much. Everything after that first race, everything just worked like clockwork.
Here we go! Great start from Ellis. Adam Ellis has got there from gate number 1. Dan Bewley's in traffic. He's going to have to wind it on now. Bewley battling with Wright's come through into second now. The lead is with Adam Ellis and the Sheffield Tigers, and also the Scunthorpe Scorpions. As Bewley closes the door and the gap, and Wright's coming through now. Oh, Adam Ellis is almost touching the air vents, girl. Adam Ellis is in the front. Gate number 1 has done the business for him.
It's often the way, your best meetings are the ones that you feel like you haven't put much effort in, but I'm pretty glad that it happened that night. It was it was a pretty big thing, and I was over the moon. It took me a few days to realise it.
Adam Ellis, who has ridden through the system in British Speedway, from the National League, in the Championship, in the Premiership, and Adam Ellis is going to lift his first ever British title! What a ride from Ellis! He's been red hot all night!
And obviously you were straight back in action, I think, the following day, weren't you, racing? So not much time to celebrate. I mean, what did you do afterwards with the trophy? Did you take it home and sleep with it, or what was the next step?
Yeah, I didn't even get to take it home. So I went home afterwards, and my mechanic Johnny took it back, obviously to his place, and it's pretty much, obviously we took it to Plymouth with us the next day, and I think we took it to every track it stayed in the van for a couple of weeks, took it to every track for the next 2 weeks of racing, and everyone wanted to see it and asking me to bring it along. So that was pretty cool. And then now I've left it at Johnny still. He's looking after it. He's wrapped it up in some tinsel for Christmas, so it's
the ultimate Christmas decoration for every Speedway fan there. I've actually got Dan Bewley's race jacket from the British final, and the last time it saw any action, it was following you around. It's probably got your shale on the front there, but
you're the unlucky one to get that one. Not many people remember the second place guy, do they?
Ouch.
So, I'm sure he's going to win it pretty soon. I get on well with Dan. We lived together this year in Poland, which was pretty good.
Oh wow, okay,
and,
cool.
Yeah, so he'll probably want that back.
Well, he'll have to come and get it. That's all I can say. Looking ahead then to next year now, to 2022, you're going to start next season as British champion, which of course is a huge boost. And you're racing once again with the Sheffield Tigers in the British Premiership. They've made one or two additional signings. You are once again staying on for another season at Ollerton. One of the key signings, of course, being Tobias Mujalak, which means you renew that friendship and partnership you had with him at Swindon from a couple of years ago. And great to have Tobias back in the British League as well, because I know he's got a lot of fans around the country from his time here before. And I think good for the Polish community too, to have some more Polish riders over here, I think it can only be a good thing for getting people through the turnstiles, to be honest. And we know that Glasgow have seen the benefits of that as well.
It's ideal. It is a really good team. I think the announcement was good. I saw it the other week. I didn't see it before they announced it, and it looked awesome. A bit different with the video, and I think it's definitely something probably a few more teams could take note of and do in the future. But the team looks good. It's good to have Toby back, and Jack. Obviously, he was. I don't know if he was top of the averages last year, but he was definitely near on unbeatable at many of the places we went to, which was always handy. Kyle, obviously, he's someone who, I think gives it 110% every time, and didn't really have the best of years points wise, but you could see that he was putting in a hell of a lot of effort, and he was always there helping us guys. If it was a Heat 15 decision, and he would happily back out of it if he thought that two guys would be better off in it. So that's really good. And who else we got? Connor Mountain. He'd done a few meetings at Sheffield last year and was really quick. Stefan Nilsson was good until he got injured. And Dan Thompson. I haven't seen much of him, but saw him at Leicester and Scunny. I think he beat me a few times at Scunny. So he can. I think everyone beat me at Scunny, but he was one of them. So hopefully he can carry on the way he's going, and mate, it looks really good. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen a lot of people saying that they're topping us for the team to beat, but obviously we all know what Cookie can do when he's firing. So I think if we can all get going together and hit the ground running from the start of the year, build a good team spirit, I think it'll be a good year.
Obviously, a lot of people are tipping Sheffield for great things based on the strength of the lineup. But for you as a Sheffield rider, who are you looking at in the Premiership ahead of next season based on the signings so far?
Yeah, well, I think Wolves are going to be pretty strong. They always seem to be up there and thereabouts. I think Ipswich could be good as well if Batch finds his form again. He's on a pretty low average, and obviously they've got Doyley there, which it's pretty much going to guarantee you double figures every meeting. Should be like 12 or 13 points minimum, which it's always hard to go somewhere when you've got that big number one. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy year. I think it's going to be tough as well. Like this year towards the end of the season, we were pretty much written off, and we went to Peterborough and won away from home before the playoffs. So we know that anything can happen, but hopefully Sheffield will be top of the table come the end of it.
And we've seen what experience can bring when you look at the Peterborough lineup, and I don't think many people tipped Peterborough to be league champions at the end of this last season, but they've pretty much got the same lineup back again. They've got Jordan Palin, who's got even more experience now. They've added Benjamin Basso to their lineup as well, and could they do it again? There was
a lot of guys that wrote them off, but they've got so much experience in that team that they're not going to crumble under pressure. And if anything's going wrong for one of them, then there was 5 or 6 guys who have been around for like nearly 20 years probably, who can all chip in and try and help them out. So you can solve problems a lot quicker that way. They're obviously all good riders, and Jordan Palin was probably the biggest shock of that team, because I think he done a lot better than what people expected, and I think he's probably only going to build on that next year. And they've got Basso, I think, at reserve, and I think he can be a bit loose, but from what I've heard, he's fast as well. So should be interesting to see how he gets on.
So the 2021 season taken into account, then a strong finish from Sheffield, and you've got a strong team going into next season. You finished as British champion. You rode for Great Britain in a test match against Poland, amongst others. So a pretty decent 2021. What would be the aim and for you success for 2022? Have you got any particular personal aims?
Personally, yeah, I've got a few. I want to obviously try and win the British Championship back to back would be good. if Cardiff goes ahead, it'll be good to to get that qualifying spot or the wildcard spot for Cardiff, because it's not something I really thought about this year. But I reckon if I don't win it next year and I miss out on that, I'll be a bit gutted that that the year I won it was the year that it didn't happen. So that's another big one up there, and then also the European Championship on a personal aim. I want to try and qualify for that. It's not an easy thing to qualify for. There's normally 2 qualifiers, and I think it's top 3 from each go through. So that's something I'm looking forward to. But other than that, we'll obviously just try and progress in Poland and Sweden from what I did last year. I didn't really do the best, and I keep doing what I've been doing with Sheffield pretty much. I think we've got a solid team there, so there should be, if we all ride to how we know we can ride, then we should be up fighting for the win.
And you got a bit more international experience as well over this year doing the Grand Prix qualifiers, which I don't know, maybe something that will come your way again in 2022. And of course, the big event is happening at Glasgow this year, which must be good news. But in 2021, you went to some far off places, and injury, perhaps after the British final, didn't really help your cause in proceeding through to the GP Challenge, but good experience.
I went to Terenzano for the first round, and it was a pretty difficult round. I remember rocking up there and thinking, I should have probably picked another one. Obviously, when we get given the choice, or if we get given a choice, you don't know who's going to be lining up in it as well. And I got there, and there was guys like Pavlicki, Dudek, Mikkelsen, Thompson, Torsell was there, Hülkenberg, and it was a pretty stacked lineup. So I kind of didn't really think about it too much, just focusing on each race at a time, and managed to qualify through to that, finishing third. So I was really happy with that. And then set the focus on the challenge. I didn't think about it too much because it was the Saturday after the British final, so I wanted to focus on the British final. And then the next day, obviously, I had my crash, which wasn't ideal. I had a crash with Crumpy at Plymouth. And I went to the challenge feeling pretty second hand. I had broken hand and my knees were pretty sore and banged up, so I'd have probably been better off pulling out of that one, because I wouldn't have done much, or I didn't do much anyway. So, but I feel like the GP, GP qualifiers kind of a step after the European. I want to try and put my focus on the European to get into that. I feel like that's the next stepping stone to progress. So if I can get through to that next year and maybe do that for a year or two, and then hopefully look on from there.
Well, all the very best of luck with it. And it's fantastic that British Speedway now is in a position where we've got young riders like yourself who are coming through and are able to start performing on the international stage and showing the world what you've got. And it's just avoiding injury, isn't it? And it's not always down to you, because I think you're a fairly safe rider when I've seen you riding myself. And sometimes things just happen, don't they? Speedway, things, as you know, can change very, very quickly indeed, and try and avoid those injuries and the layoffs that follow them.
That's obviously something I want to try and get rid of, the crashes. It's kind of inevitable when you do so many meetings. I think I was pushing like 90 odd meetings this year, and I don't know many guys racing 90 meetings and don't have a few offs. So, but it just seems to be, the last couple of years have been two that you remember of. It's at the end of the season, so you kind of remember it. Whereas the crash at Plymouth, probably a month after it, I'd kind of forgotten about it. But now you've not got much going on. So next year, hopefully, I can, plan to cut the number of meetings down, focus on the meetings I have got, doing well in them, and obviously avoid getting injured.
Adam Ellis, 2021 British champion and racer for the Sheffield Tigers and the Great Britain team as well, on Humans of Speedway. And coming next, we're going to find out what his Speedway paradise might look like. What's his dream track, dream stadium? Who'll be in his all-time 1-7? Who would be the opposition? All this and more on the way in the next section of Humans of Speedway. You're listening to Humans of Speedway, and at the time of recording and releasing this episode, of course, we are heading towards the festive season. And at this time of year, what better to bolster your little stockpile of drinks and snacks, which you always need in reserve, don't you, than with some free beer. That's right, and that's what we can offer you right now, because we've teamed up with beer52.com, who are a beer club like no other. And just for Humans of Speedway listeners, they've got a special offer. Now, if you go to beer52.com/speedway, you can get their offer of 10 free beers. Now, these are proper quality beers from all around the world. I can't say exactly which ones you're going to get, but it could be from any of 40 or so countries across 5 continents. But they are the best beers in these respective nations. And maybe a little bit of something different that you haven't seen before. And I got my box and cracked into it the other night, I've got to be honest. And there was a tremendous beer in there from Germany. And I've looked it up, and it's like a big beer in Germany, but I've never seen it before. And it was wonderful. So you can get your free case of beer from Beer 52. 10 free beers if you do it before the 17th of December. After that, it might drop to 8, but, give it a try, see what happens. And you just pay £5.95 for the postage. That's how you claim your free case. So you cover the postage and they cover the beer. Sounds like a fair swap. And after that, you will join the monthly beer club for £24 a month. But there's no minimum contract. You can pause, you can cancel at any time. So if you just want the first one and cover the postage, absolutely fine. And after that, you get all sorts of different beers. You can choose light beers if you want, or you can have dark beers. You get a magazine, you get delicious snacks. Find out all about it. Speedway fans, beer52.com/speedway to get this Humans of Speedway deal. Right now, let's find out about Adam Ellis, 2021 British champion, rider for the Sheffield Tigers. His dream Speedway meeting, what would it look like? And who's going to make his dream lineup, his dream track? We're going to answer these questions right now. Adam, are you set for this?
Oh, yeah. This is going a bit off the cuff because I've deleted the notes.
Okay, right. Well, I'll ask you the first question. I'm sure that you'll hold your own fine in this. So the first question we always ask then is, which track would you choose to host your dream meeting on? If you could ride only one track, regardless of the facilities around it, just the shale, we're talking about the racing track here, which track would you choose above all others?
That'd definitely be Redcar.
Wow.
It's pretty. It's for me. It's the perfect shape. Plenty of racing lines normally. The banking's perfect, and I love going there. I haven't been there as much as I'd like to go there, but that'd definitely that's my favourite track. Favourite track I've ever ridden on. So we'll go with Redcar.
Well, it's really good that you as a rider enjoy it. I as a fan, I've always enjoyed the racing at Redcar, and I think it is a bit of a hidden gem in British Speedway. Those that know, and the Redcar fans, and there's a lot of them, obviously enjoy the racing there, and anybody who's been to visit. But if you've never been to see a meeting at Redcar, next season do it. Come down and enjoy it, because you will not be disappointed. The racing's fantastic. It's a nice fast track, and I personally, I've never seen a bad meeting there. And I might sound slightly biased because now I've been doing the commentary for the live stream at Redcar. But even before that, it's always been fantastic racing.
When Speedway GB post a video on, there's always some Redcar races, and I don't think it might not be the best tracks to watch at, but from a riding point of view, it's one of the best. You can come in tight, come in wide, stay wide. You can cut back. You can go to the fence. It's just it's an easy track to ride, but it's also hard to be quicker than the others on, because everyone seems to be fast there or can get their bike hooking up on a fast line, whether it's inside or outside. Yeah,
and anybody can beat anyone as well. We saw one of the races I was commentating on this season, Jordan Jenkins beat Hans Andersen around it, and it was just like he'd not had the greatest night at that point, and it just shows that anybody could beat anyone else on it, given that sort of bit of luck and an opportunity, that it's not just a track for the Gators. It's not just a track for the experienced. That a young lad like that could beat Hans Andersen round there, and Hans Andersen was going at him and he just couldn't get past him. It was just a brilliant race.
Yeah, and to be fair, there's probably most of the tracks in the UK, if Hans was racing against him, he'd probably pick him off fairly easily. Like a rider of that caliber, he'd be able to make his way through. So there's if we could have every track similar to Redcar's track, I reckon we'd have good racing everywhere. For sure.
And my other top Redcar fact is that it's almost the same dimensions as the Cardiff track, so that's where you want to go to practice if ever you do get to Cardiff. Yeah, pretty much.
I might be signing for Redcar then.
I'd say watch this space, but they've already declared their team, but you never know. So whilst Redcar is the best track you've ever ridden on, which will be great news to the Redcar massive, I'm sure. Which stadium would you put the Redcar track in?
There's not many. I don't really know what stadium I'd put it in, but I remember going the day before the GP Challenge. Me and my mechanics, we went to this little football match in Slovenia, and it was this tiny stadium, but had stands and stuff, and it was probably only a 5,000 seater stadium. But I remember the whole football match, we were sitting there going, "Oh, how good would this be as a speedway stadium?" The stands were raised, above the pitch, and so it'd probably be something similar to that. I don't know if there is a speedway stadium anywhere in the world like that, or similar to the ice hockey. I don't know if you've been to an ice hockey match. All the seats they go up pretty high, but there's not a lot of capacity, but there's always a good atmosphere in there. So I reckon it'd be something where you had probably about 5,000 seats, and it'd be ideal for England if you had people kind of crammed on top of each other, sitting down, and sitting on top of the track over the racing. I reckon that would be perfect.
Yeah, I think it is good to be close to the track and get that that sort of view from above, but not be too far away. It's it's an interesting mix, but it's a great. That's like the best way to view it, isn't it? And I think it's probably why Cardiff is such a nice place as well, because the stands are steep but quite close, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. You look at all the stadiums, new stadiums I've been to are built like that, and it doesn't seem as big when you're in it as what it does from when you watch it on telly or how you imagine it'd be. And it always feels the atmosphere is normally pretty good. So I think something like that would be ideal, especially around Redcar, seeing as though it's not too big.
Yeah, of course. And the $1 million question now then we move on to, who would be in your all-time 1 to 7, your dream team that you're going to be fielding on the Redcar track in a Slovenian stadium that we're not quite sure what it is. But who would be racing for you?
So I had put quite a few guys in it, and then I saw your following question, which was which team would they go up against, and there was quite a few guys that were matching, so I've had to swap them around a bit. But I think I started off with Doyley was at 1, Zmarzlik definitely, he'd be in there, Crumpy, Woofy, I think Darcy would also be in there. I'll put myself at reserve because I'd want to be involved in that.
Yeah, of course, why not? So you got Jason Doyle, Bartosz Zmarzlik, Jason Crump, Ty Woofenden, Darcy Ward, yourself, Adam Ellis, and one more.
Mark Loram. I think he was in the other team, though.
All right, well, we'll come to the opposition team shortly. Next question is, who would referee your meeting? Do you have a particular referee that you would call upon, or a particular history of kicking off with referees? It's not something I associate with you particularly, slamming the phone down and screaming at the ref, but...
No, not normally. I seem to get on with a lot of them, but I wouldn't say I've got a favourite, so I don't know. I reckon I'd probably do a raffle draw before the meeting for a fan to ref it. Don't want to be in any refs' bad books for the coming years, so I won't put any of them in.
So the fans can be the ref, and a very diplomatic answer there. And I see what you're doing, because you don't want to offend any referees. You've got a long career left. Okay, next question then is If you're going to tamper with the rules of Speedway in some way, if it was all left down to you, what would you change about the sport? What would be the rule that you would have a look at?
I don't know if there is much. I'd probably just want to make it a bit more modern. I don't know if you watched any of the cricket, the 100 that was on this summer, but I hate cricket, and I ended up watching that for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Just because it was a bit more entertaining. There was a lot going on, a lot of flashing lights and DJs and stuff. So that kind of got me into it. So I'd probably wouldn't be a rule change, but I'd probably try and make Speedway a bit more modern in that way, and try and get some more people in, make it more of a night out rather than just watching 15 races. Yeah,
and I think that you're probably not alone in thinking that, and I know that there are promoters trying to do that. And particularly, I think it'll be helped by the Grand Prix situation with Discovery. I think they're wanting to do a bit more of that kind of stuff, aren't they, as they go along?
Yeah, it would be good. I think that's all it's lacking to probably, incite some new people to come and even just see what it is. Even if they don't come back, if it's more of a night out, I'm pretty sure if it was more of a night out, then people probably would come back. So, yeah, it would be good if that started happening a bit more.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to this new era and see what it brings. But the final question for you then, Adam Ellis, is obviously you picked your all-time 1 to 7. We've got the track. It's happening at Redcar in a stadium in Slovenia. And there's going to be a lot of razzmatazz. There's going to be some DJs and stuff on beforehand. It's going to be good. And the fans are going to be refereeing it. But who is going to be the opposition for this meeting, racing against your All-Stars?
It'd be the pool team from, that's it, I don't know what year it was, but I think it was 2003 era, that had Ricardson, Lee Adams, I think Mark Lauren was there as well.
Yeah, what a team! Yeah, 2003 pool playoff final team. They played against Coventry in the final. It was Lee Adams, Bjarne Pedersen, Antonio Lindback, Tony Ricardson, and Mark Loram also thrown in there. Dave Watt and Alice Drimmel also involved. So quite a lineup, really, of some of the all-stars of that era, you have to say.
Yeah, that's a pretty good lineup. That's the one. So I don't know if they'd stand much chance against my 7. Definitely a team I remembered from when I was younger. So they'd have to be in it, or it'd have to be against them for sure.
That's nice. I think that would be a nice meeting, and I think the promoters of Redcar Speedway would be particularly happy to host it for you.
Yeah, it might cost them a fair bit to build the stadium though, but yeah, I reckon
you never know.
Fans in.
Good stuff. Well, look, thanks, Adam, for spending the time with us and telling us about everything, and good luck for 2022, and hope that you can build on what's has been a fantastic year, I think, for you all round, and long may it continue.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully see you around in 2022 and catch up soon on another podcast somewhere.
Absolutely, I'm sure we will at some point. And my thanks to Adam Ellis for joining us in this episode of Humans of Speedway. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I think that pretty much rounds up the new stuff for 2021, but be assured there's plenty of new stuff lined up for 2022. Some of our recent episodes, Phil Lanning, make sure you listen to that one, because there's loads of insight there into some of what goes on behind the scenes in Speedway and in getting coverage in the press, not least. Mike Taylor from BBC Radio WM, Ian Stavros Slater, who has worked with a number of well-known British riders, not least Carl Stonehewer. He was his mechanic through the Grand Prix years and beyond, and still working in the pits across British Speedway today with the likes of Kyle Howarth is one of them. David Howe is also these days in the pits, working alongside Ryan Douglas, but of course he had his own Speedway career as well, and at one point appearing in a British Grand Prix at Cardiff. And Chris Louis, who is an all-round Ipswich legend, current promoter, director of British Speedway at this moment in time, and also an Ipswich great, British Speedway great, written for Great Britain, third in the world at one point. He's done it all, and that was a fantastic episode as well. And there's much more besides that as well, so have a listen back. There were 13 other episodes. I think Adam Ellis is the 14th new episode we've done in 2021. And there's much more besides that from 2020 to go back through as well. And we'll be back in January with something new. I think we might do a little bit of a best of 2021 at some point over the Christmas period. But have a great festive period, whatever you're doing and however you're celebrating. And thanks for listening to Humans of Speedway. Take care, and we'll speak to you soon.
Social Podcast Network.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection for a wide variety of statistics, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and an enormous selection of players and stat options are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million football fans who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/get100 and use code GET100. That's code GET100 at prizepicks.com/get100 for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.